Right, so glute kickbacks, there's obviously a few different ways you can do these. So let's just go to the kind of traditional way that most people would do them. So setting this up right to the bottom. Right. So yeah, the traditional way to kind of set this up is from the bottom there. The beauty of this cable machine is we've got this to hold on to, so that's obviously going to help. All we're going to do is just take that kind of lean forward and then keep our abs nice and tight. We're trying to keep all of this stuff still, as all we really need to do is just pull the leg back. So it doesn't matter. What, with your knee bent? Like, yeah.
And then sometimes I'll do that.
So it doesn't necessarily matter if your knee's bent. So I suppose the benefit of having a bent knee is that, like, when your leg's straight and you're in like a bent forward position, you're going to feel that stretch of your hamstring. So you might be a little bit limited by like tightness in there. So you might actually be better to have that slight bend in the knee. Now, to work what we're trying to work here, the glutes, well, the glutes don't actually cross the knee anyway, so we don't necessarily even need to think about what's going on in the knee, really. It's more about like taking your upper leg and taking it back, so extending the hip through doing that. So if we think about it like that, it doesn't really matter what your knee's doing, as long as we're not feeling like too much tightness in that hamstring or anything like that. We could set this up in a way that we attach the cuff up there. That completely eliminates like that lower half of the leg altogether, and it means you can focus more on the glute. But the thing is, when the cuff's attached up here, it's going to be a lot easier, so we're going to need a lot more load, which this is quite an unstable exercise anyway. Like, you might find when you do these, when you're on one leg, actually you feel this other leg a lot more because the glutes on that side are having to stabilize, which isn't a bad thing, but it's probably the downfall of this version of it. Yeah, so like lean forward into it and just make sure there's tension from the start. And then like everything up here is just staying still. So we're keeping tight through the abs. We're trying to keep the pelvis like fairly stable. That's perfect. But then as I say, if your knee's bent, it's not really an issue. Whatever feels more comfortable for you, really. See, that looks perfect. The nice thing about that one is it is going to be slightly harder at the start, and it's going to drop off as we get to the top as well. Good. Again, just keep tight through the abs, because like what almost happens there is almost like a little bit of rotation in the abdominal section. I would never normally call it that. I don't know why I said that. The abdominal section. The downfall of this exercise is going to be the fact that like it's a stability thing, isn't it? Like obviously you can hold on to this machine, but like you're still having to stabilize in that leg, and the minute it starts getting heavy, we might be limited with how much load we can do. It's going to be the lack of stability. So once you get to a certain weight, again this looks fine, but once we get to a certain weight, you're going to be limited in how much force you can produce just because you're busy trying to stabilize. There's too much stuff to juggle almost. And how does that feel? Like, where are we feeling that one?
On the leg, not the other leg.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's interesting. So what it's telling us is there is just a lot more strength on that side, isn't there? Because when this side's having to stabilize, when you're on that one leg, you're feeling it more. But when it's working, you're feeling it a bit more. On the other side, you're not feeling so much when it's having to stabilize. So everything around about that right hip must be a bit stronger than the left hip. Yeah, okay, that's cool. That's interesting. So let's try adding some stability to it with a bench. So you can do the same thing, right, with a bench. And that's taken out the aspect, like, because if I've got this bench and I'm leaning on here, if I'm on here, now all of a sudden this leg is still having to stabilize to some degree, but not as much. We've got a chest support in there that's going to help us. Now, another thing you can do with that is it doesn't necessarily have to come from the bottom. It can actually, if I can get it up there, fucking hell, I'm approaching this from a weird angle. Yeah, you can do this from the top as well. So these are just like climbing slings, right? But they're obviously strong as fuck because they're for that kind of thing. So what we can do with this, because it's got so many attachments, and again, this is going to be easier when you've got someone with you, but we can attach it, makes it easier to get it sort of set up. So if you jump on there, right?
Okay, now that feels really light.
It feels really light doing it that way. Okay, so let's try loading it up. I kind of almost want you a bit more over here, yeah, so it's all in line. Yes, well, let's get you out of it for a second. Right, so let's pull the bench over, just so it's a bit more in line. So that you're like, so if your knee's there, like see how that's straight down, like it's in the same plane almost. It's like your windscreen wiper going across your windscreen. It's on on the same kind of plane. Right, let's try that. So just keep your knee bent and pull it back. So you're trying to pull your upper leg. You're trying to take this upper leg from here round to here almost. And see what we've done there.
Is that wrong?
No, you're fine, you're fine. We've attached the cuff above your knee now. So that's kind of taken out all of this stuff down here, and it means we can concentrate on just the hip stuff, which is probably why this is so much easier.
Yeah.
We've added stability and we've took out that stability aspect, but all of a sudden, because we're so stable and because we're cutting out the stuff below the leg and we've attached the cuff on closer to your hip, it's become too easy. So there's pros and cons of all these things. So this, again, is going to be the same thing. It's just another way of delivering the same thing. Let me just move this slightly. It's the beauty of this cable. I can line it up with you. Yes. And again, having these things, this, like even if you're by yourself, having this thing makes it a lot easier to get into this position. The biggest problem here, again, is going to be stability, because like the minute you start getting quite a lot of load on that, it's going to want to pull you up off the floor. So where this one might work in quite well into a workout might be later in the workout, where you're already quite burnt out and you're needing to use less load. So, but again, we've attached that cuff. That cuff's attached on above the knee, so we're taking out all of this stuff and we can focus just solely on hip stuff. But if you think about this is like the starting point at the top. It's like a starting point of an RDL almost. You've got like a stretch and a hamstring sort of thing, and then we're just contracting the glutes by extending the hip there.
Straight, or it doesn't matter?
I would keep a slight bend, because like if it's straight, you're probably going to feel again a lot of stretch in the hamstrings and a lot of sensation there, even if they're not necessarily working. And then depending on your foot position, you could make that kind of sciatic nervy as well. But like we've eliminated all this stuff up here, and we're working on solely kind of hip stuff, glute stuff here.
Yeah.
But it's quite easy. That's the problem. I'll give you a push for the first one. Let's try that.
Yeah, I feel that more now.
Yeah, we're getting a bit more stretch into it, so bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, and then push. Yeah, to be fair, the squats and deadlifts, I feel like just everywhere but nowhere, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, that's a lot less weight. How does that feel?
Yeah.
We need some...
Like, I'd say I can feel it more in my glute now,
Yeah.
but the bottom.
So what we've done is we had the cuff up here, right? So you had this weight times that distance, but now you've got less weight, but times that distance. So like, although it's less weight, actually to the glutes is actually more work.
Yeah. Like I can feel it more in the glute.
But I think you still need a bit more weight. I'm going to move that, that's annoying.
Yeah, I know it's good.
Let's go. And then that's the downfall of this one.
Wait, no, I'm not going to let this. I'm not going to let that do that to me.
But the problem is it's so much pulling you back up.
No,
And
that is glute.
so it's a good point to say, with a lack of stability comes a lack of force output from the muscles. So it's like if you were to try and do a squat on a trampoline, for example, the fact that like it's so unstable means you can't produce the same amount of force. And